So the story about Jimmy Kimmel is definitely not just a media story. It's much bigger than that. And that's one of the reasons I think Democratic leaders across the country are speaking out against ABC for indefinitely pausing late night show Jimmy Kimmel Live after facing pressure from Donald Trump's FCC. We're going to talk about a lot of this with Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. Here's what he said earlier this evening, I should say, since it's broken in the last couple hours. A free and democratic society cannot silence comedians because the president doesn't like what they say. This is an attack on free speech and cannot be allowed to stand. All elected officials need to speak up and push back on this undemocratic act. Joining me now is Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. This is as I just said, this is much bigger than a media story. It feels to me, first of all, Brendan Carr went out today, the FCC chair, and basically called out Jimmy Kimmel by name. And then a couple of hours later, he was put on indefinite, hiatus, suspension, whatever you want to call it. Does this feel, it feels to me like obedience in advance. Does it feel to you like that?
It's intimidation, clearly. And this is what we're seeing across the board from the Trump administration. They're using the power of the government to go after businesses, to get them to do things that they need or want, right? Either to pay them, as we have seen, or to fire people, as we have seen. And here we have a comedian. I mean, this is somebody who's on every night, frankly, probably offending somebody every single night.
He may have made fun of you before.
Indeed, he has. And so I just want to say that, we should not be going after people for this. Look, did he get some things wrong? Yeah. I mean, but he is not a commentator, a news anchor. This is somebody who's a comedian, for goodness sakes. And now we've got the Trump administration literally targeting individuals. You saw it with Stephen Colbert. Now you're seeing it with Kimmel. Anybody that's criticizing this administration, they're using the power of government to intimidate companies to fire people.
You said, and you never hold back, and what's one of the things I always love to talk to you about, you said that politicians, people should be speaking up. This is an undemocratic act. People are just digesting this. It's a part of a pattern. What does that look like? What is the kind of pressure you think politicians or people watching right now could put on ABC or Disney or others about this? Well,
first, everybody should be saying that ABC should reverse their decision. This is not something they should have been doing. I don't think that ABC, at least historically, has not been an organization that has exhibited this kind of behavior. But, now we're seeing the pressure that can be brought by the federal government. You can imagine the pressure that's on Disney and ABC and on their business based upon, well, what's been said so far today. And so I must say, I do not understand why people are not standing up and pushing back when they ought to. Because what's at stake here is free speech. It's our Constitution and our way of life. Do we really want the President of the United States intimidating people, organizations to get others fired? This is not that moment. People ought to be standing up and speaking out. What can they do? Well, it's what I've been saying for some time now, which is if we want to get action, we now can't rely upon a MAGA-controlled Congress. We can't rely on the President of the United States, seemingly, although we'll see whether we can rely on the Supreme Court of the United States. Increasingly, it doesn't appear that way. And so we only have one other thing to do, which is public action. People actually speaking up, speaking out, boycotting, showing up and protesting, and their representatives who agree with them doing the very same.
What should people be boycotting right now? This is bigger than just today's story, but what does that look like?
It is, but I think if we can work on ABC to make them understand how wrong the decision is, in other words, if people will write letters, write emails, post online, speak up, protest, that's what I'm calling for. I think that it may be that ABC and Disney see that they may have made a mistake and they would reverse that decision. By the way, if they do that, you can see what happens when organizations and people stand up and push back. You can actually accomplish something. You can move the ball. I've seen that for the state of Illinois. We've seen that for the universities where there are boards that are willing to step up and speak out and push back. It's going to be a hard 3+ years under Donald Trump, but I believe that there is momentum that can be gained by doing things like this. And the elections are coming up in November of 2026. And if in November of 2026, the public will show up at the ballot box and in the meantime speak up with their megaphones and their microphones, that I believe we can at least stop this intrusion on the Constitution, this kind of un-American behavior by the president for his last 2 years in office.
There are a lot of people in boardrooms. You've been in many boardrooms. You've been, in college, university boardrooms, in governor's offices, who were having strategy sessions about what to do in this moment, right? In media companies, too. Do we push back? Do we make agreements? What should we do? You have decided to push back. That has worked in many ways in Illinois. How has it worked? What lessons have you learned? And what are the consequences of not pushing back? How have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think that people need to recognize that there are going to be consequences to pushing back. There just are. There's no way that, and you've seen Donald Trump sort of going back and forth about whether he's sending troops to Chicago or not. Right. And he threatens all kinds of things. And now he's sent ICE in to cause mayhem on the ground in Chicago right now because he's hoping that the challenge that will be brought to ICE and has been brought by protesters will cause the kind of reaction that will demand that he bring in some troops. So there are consequences, there's no doubt, to standing up. The consequences of not standing up, though, are much, much worse. We see it in authoritarian regimes when things just happen. There's a whole cadre of people who just step back, sit back. They're bystanders. They don't do anything about it because they're hoping if they duck and keep their head low, nothing will happen to them. Well, eventually something happens to them. We just saw J.D. Vance go and talk about maybe sending troops into Detroit. This is after the governor of Michigan has been working with the administration, trying to get things done for her state by, sitting down with the president and figuring out what they could do together. And now this is how she's paid back. You can see that it does not matter. Making a deal with this administration leads simply to them getting, in the near term, what they want, which is capitulation. And in the long term, they're going to abrogate that deal. You've seen it Donald Trump's entire life. He breaks contracts. He did it in business over and over and over again. He would sue people when he knew that he was going to get sued in order to stop the action against him or prevent people from being able to afford to actually bring that lawsuit. Now he's president of the United States. He's got a lot more power at his fingertips. That pushback that he offers is hard, but we are fighting for our democracy now. And that is why people need to stand up and speak out.
It's interesting you brought up the governor of Michigan. There are others who have decided, in Congress too, that they need to kind of lay low. They need to make deals. There's questions about keeping the government open or not keeping the government open. It sounds like what you're saying is that's just not going to work. Appeasing is not going to work. And that's a lesson to other states where Trump may want to send National Guard or send ICE or play nice, but then still has plans to come after you.
Authoritarians want control. And every time they get someone to, act in appeasing fashion, right, they make one step toward control, and they will silence that group, move on to the next one. And this is actually it's the playbook. Read On Tyranny, read so many books about how authoritarian regimes come about. That is what Donald Trump's trying to effectuate here. And we're seeing it with regard to the media now, silencing people who are opponents, political opponents of his administration. I mean, when that happens, well, what's left, actually, if no one can speak out because they're too afraid or because they have been fired and silenced? What's left? We really don't have a democracy.
This is you have been you've had tough stories written about you. You've had tough broadcasts. Everybody who's a prominent governor has had this, right? You've answered tough questions. You've never called for media to be eliminated or to go away just because they're asking you tough questions. This is such an important part of our democracy. I've experienced this in a different way myself. Do you worry seeing the news today and seeing what happened with Colbert? They are late night comedy hosts, but it's a very close bridge to news broadcasters and others, that the ability to tell truth, to speak truth to power on broadcast media is not going to survive through this.
That's right. And so, again, when you don't have independent news media left, and look what they did with the White House correspondents, right? They essentially silenced or pushed back all of the kind of objective media. And now they've only got the right-wing bloggers and those who are friends of the administration sitting in the front. They're only calling on those people, mostly only calling on those people. And that's the kind of administration that we're seeing. This is the future of the country if we do not step up and speak out. That is my concern. And I've seen this over and over again. Look, I built a Holocaust museum with survivors. I've also read a whole lot about authoritarian regimes. This is the playbook, folks. If you're not paying attention now and doing something about it, well, then you're going to have to sit down the rest of your life because democracy is being taken away.
Do not be quiet in this moment. That is what I consistently hear from you. I believe it. I echo it. I confirm it myself. Thank you for being here tonight. This was a very last minute. We're so delighted that you were able to make it. Thank you, Governor Pritzker.
Thanks, Jen.